Hello everybody. This video will show me walking through the book exercise from chapter 10 in the book. This is module 10. And so I'm not going to just type what's in the book because there's, it's as much value as you can get from looking at that example. As I've said, I'm sure in the past, programming is a process. It's not an end result or a typing exercise. So I'm going to essentially solve this problem like I've never seen it before, and hopefully then you will follow along to the process of solving the problem. So we start off, it says follow along with the discussion in the book and in the video. So this is that. Let's start with the stuff that we know we always need. And I'll take this comment out of the top. And now we might not need IO manip in this, but after a while you just start putting these things in, and it has very little negative impact to put the ones that you think you might need in there. So let's just run that, and of course it's not going to match, but we are going to see what it is we're expected to do, which is to enter a score for some number of times, and then display them back. And then say there were 5 data values, and the average was 33 for this particular example. So as this particular chapter is on arrays, you will probably be able to guess that you're supposed to put this into an array, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to spit the values back out unless you did an awful lot of if, which would just be horrendous and horrible, and you should not get credit for it, and you wouldn't on an exam. So so these are all integers, so the type of thing that we're going to be getting values of are integers. So let's call them integers, and let's call it data. And I believe the example in the book said that you were maxed out at 10, so we'll go with 10. All right, so that sets aside the space for the data, and we're going to need to do something with regards to going through the loop and inserting values into the loop. So let's do something like this. Let's say we have a loop control variable or an array subscript. So let's just call it IDEX. Okay, so it's an integer, so we'll call it IDEX, and we'll say it's 0. All right, so and then we're going to say something like this: while the data of IDEX is not equal to -1, and we're going to do something for some amount of time. Well, all right, first of all, we have to be careful because we can't just refer to the, now remember the arrays are 0 offset, so the 0th element is really the first element in the array. We can't just really refer to this because I'm pretty sure it will not compile. If it does, it will definitely be an infinite loop here. So let's just put a break in here just for now in case it compiles. But what I think we're going to see is that it'll tell us we're trying to access that without without having set the value. So let's see here. Let's go over here to output 1, and that has crashed. Well, not crashed, but it hasn't put any output out. Let's see here. This is interesting error message. That's very interesting. It just didn't do anything. All right, well, let's look. Let's see what we have here. And so we have, well, actually, okay, it's not a surprise. There's no output. Okay, I thought we would end up with a error message from the compiler telling us we were trying to access this, before there was any data values in it. So, but let's just put a something here like just an exclamation mark, just to have some output, and let's put an endl there. Okay, oops. All right, so now the thing is likely, well, let's just see what happens. Let's just run it and see. I think hold on here. I've lost my run button because I'm in too small a space here. Vocarium sometimes doesn't do well when you have the screen reduced too small, because all of these run on top of each other. So, and the reason, so what I have to keep it small though, because I have a large screen, and if I don't, then you won't be able to see everything when you see the video. So, so I just reset that. Let's go back to where we were. All right, so let's just run that. Okay, and so we see we do get this one time because it's not equal to -1. Now, if we wanted to force it to be -1, we would do something like this. And so now when we run this, we shouldn't see any exclamation mark at all. All right, so the output here would be empty. Okay, well, so that just gets us started. We can make this anything that isn't -1. So let's set it to that, for example. Okay, because it won't matter, because the next thing we're actually going to do is to say to the user, enter a score, -1 to stop, :space, and no endl here. And then we're going to read in a value. All right, well, now we could read it into a temporary value and then insert it into the array, but there's no real good reason to do that. Let's just do it this way. We're going to read it into IDX, and then or into data sub IDX, and then we will display data sub IDX back out onto the screen, and here we will put an endl. And let's just run that and see what we get. Okay, so the output now is enter a score 11. Oh, well, we have this break statement here, so let's get rid of that, because that's just made it only run once. So let's try it again. Let's look at the output. All right, now we have enter a score 11. Okay, so we have all of that working, and if we look here, what we need next are your scores were, and then a list of the scores. So let's go back over here, and let's just do this. So we will say cout your scores were, and let's see if that goes on to the next line. Nope. Okay, so just a space there. And now we're going to want to do something that goes through the list of all of the elements. So let's just do this. Let's just say int x equals 0, and then while x is less than idx, we're going to do something. Well, that something that we're going to do is cout the value. So data sub idx, and I believe there's a comma after that. So let's put the comma there. And is there a comma space or just a comma? Looks like a comma space. Now, again, as we're doing this, this is not going to work perfectly the first time. We're doing it in steps. Now, I could say x equals x plus 1 here, or I could say x plus plus. So we'll do that because this is C++, and we might as well utilize the right nomenclature here, so to speak. Now, again, we're not expecting this to work, but we're seeing what happens here. So Well, first of all, it says your score were, and I'm pretty sure that that grammar is incorrect. It's supposed to be your scores were. But you notice nothing is displaying here. It's just kind of dying off. So let's see here what's going on. First of all, it's your scores were. And then we got no commas. We got, nothing's happening here. We would at least see the comma, right? Oh, this is a problem. Look at this. IDX up here, let me just show you. See how right now IDX is, so let's just run that. All right, let's look at the output. Right now IDX is 0. Oh, what do you mean IDX is 0? Here we're doing this up here. Oh, we read it in, we display it, but we never add 1 to IDX. So now this way, now we're going to be going increasing the index and then also filling in the array as we go. So now let's see if we get anywhere. Well, this is interesting. What do we got going here? Oh, we got a whole bunch of stuff that goes too long and then crashes, looks like. So let's see here. Well, let's go up to the top and see. Enter a score, enter a score. Uh-oh. What's going on here? All right, we have enter a score, enter a score. Does it ever end? What happens down here? It eventually just gives up. So let's see here. Let's do this. Oh, look what's happening here. Right? This is never going to be the right one. So here, let's go back down and look at this again. All right. It takes a long time to scroll to the top. Okay, it took so long to scroll to the top that I decided to just stop with that, and we'll find another way to fix this. Now, so what's going on is we have some kind of an infinite loop going on here, right? So one of the ways to avoid the infinite loop is to do something like this. All right, I'm going to say oops equals 0. All right, and then down here I'm going to say if oops plus plus is greater than, let's say, 20, break. Now what's that buying us? Well, each time it goes through here, it's going to add 1 to oops. And if oops gets to be greater than 20, it's just going to stop. Because we know we're not supposed to get more than 10 anyway. So if we're doing 20, there's something wrong. So let's go and see if we can't, if this doesn't help us narrow this down a little better. Oh, that didn't help at all. Well, it turns out that I'm debugging the wrong part. Look at this. Enter a score here is where the issue is. So where we need this stuff is up here. So I got a little bit sidetracked on this bottom thing, but let's move this up here and do the exact same thing inside of that oops counter there. So now hopefully we get some reasonable answers. All right, so let's take a look here. All right, sometimes it's a little hard to see these, so I'm going to push this way so we can see where the results are. Okay, all right, and then let's look at the output. All right, so you can see what's going on here is that we hit that oops counter because for some reason this -1 is not stopping. So we have to say, well, wait a minute, why not? All right, why is that not stopping? Because right here we're checking for that, right? But here's the problem. We're putting it into here, and then we're adding 1. So, you know what? That's not going to help. So the question then becomes, And by the way, in the book, there's a different version of this, which is called like there's a go on flag, right? And go on is yes or no and something like that, right? And that seems kind of like, oh, why would you have to do all that, right? Well, one of the reasons is for this exact issue here, right? So let's do this. Let's move this up here. And instead of, well, we'll leave the oops in there, right? Okay, just for now. But what we really want to say is something like this. If data sub IDX is equal to -1, break. Now, this is before we add 1 to IDX. And so this should then check it and break out of that loop. So let's just check that out. And let's look at the output. It's easier. Okay, so this part is now exiting properly, although everything is -1. So we'll have to see what that's all about. Okay, but we are now getting that to exit properly. And once that's out of there, that infinite loop, you can take this oops counter out of there and then again rerun it, make sure that it's working properly. Well, you know, partially properly at the moment, right? Here's that. Okay, right now IDX is 5. We don't need that line anymore because that answer is fine. So then the next question becomes, why is everything -1? Well, let's look at this. We're displaying data IDX. Well, IDX is 5, I think, in this current version, the current run here. Yeah, it is 5. And that's IDX is not changing inside of this loop. What we want to say here is X. All right, so let's do that. Let's see if it ran or if I hit it wrong. There we go. All right, and let's look at the output. Ah, okay. Now your scores were 11, 22, 33, 44, and 55, which is pretty close, except that I'm pretty sure that the output is not supposed to have the last comma. So the question becomes, well, how do we do that? Well, let's break displaying this thing on the screen, the value on the screen, and separate that from the comma. Now, for right now, nothing different is going to happen there. Let's throw an endl down here just so it ends the output there. All right, now let's just take a look at that. All right, and now the output is not different, right? But what we've done is separated these two pieces out. Well, when is it we don't want to display the comma? We don't want to display the comma if something like if X is equal to IDX -1. Now I'm guessing that might be it, or it might be IDX. We're just going to check it out right here by running it. I'm sorry, we want to say if it's not equal to IDX -1. So let's just take a look and see. Great. Well, that seemed to work. And it seemed to work without having to build the 55 in there or the specific number in there, right? Remember, when you're doing this, you have to have these things resolve you know, the general case. You can't just make it all specific. Well, if it's 5, do such and so, because it won't work with the other examples. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. So that gives us that. Now, what is not matching? Let's look at that. Let's get down here and see if we can push that up and then run it again and see what the what differences we're running into here. Okay. Yes. Well, next we're supposed to say how many data values there were, and then what the average is. Okay. So let's go back up to that. And so let's say, well, that part's the first part's fairly easy. There were IDX data values. I don't know if, does it have a period? Let's see. Yes, okay. So there's a period, period, and L. Let's just see if that gets us closer. Okay, so it's also something happening here. Let's see, and you can see they're all off by 1. Enter a score, -1 to stop. But yet, these seem to be ending one more over than that one. So what is the difference here? Let's see. The difference here is that there's a space between score and the parenthesis here. So let's go back up here and fix that. Let's see. Looks like there should be a space there. So let's go and look at that. Okay, so the only thing we're looking at here now is the average is 33. Now, you can keep the running, to get an average, you need to know how many there were and what the total of the values were. So there's no reason you can't keep the total going from when the data input was happening. Now you have to be a little careful that you don't add the -1 into this, right? So let's do this. If the data value is not equal to -1, we're going to say total equals total plus data IDX, else break. Now, we could do that with the curly brackets if we wanted to, but since there's only one line in each of these parts, like we could do it like this. I don't want this part to be confusing to you. You can do this, but in C++, if you only have one line to the if statement or one line to the else, you don't actually need the curly brackets. But so we'll put them in there. I don't want that to be the thing confusing you. So let's see here. Well, of course, we don't print total or anything, so we don't know if it's going to be right. So let's say here, so I'm thinking that total is probably correct there. So let's just go for the gusto and find out what the, they're supposed to say the average was and then a number. So all of these numbers, even the output numbers, are integers. So I'm going to assume that the average is going to be an integer for right now. Now, if it turns out we need to round it up or down or something, we will look into that. In fact, let's do it this way. Let's turn it in. Let's use double, could be a float, right? But we'll call it average. And we'll say that is equal to the total divided by the number of data values. Now we have to also be careful that there's not 0 here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But and the other issue is that this is an integer divided by an integer, and so in C++ you're going to end up with getting an integer value anyway, even though you've called this a double. So the way to make sure that this thing is actually going to give us a double is to force one or the other of them to temporarily be a double. It doesn't change the data type of total or IDX. It just changes it temporarily while it's doing the calculation. So, and then let's say here, I think the phrase is the average was. So let's say the average was, and then average. And I don't think there's a period after it. Nope. And so just end L. Now this probably won't match because this will be a float or a double. It's just a double-sized float. So let's just run it and let's just see though what we do get. Oh, we got, here we got a problem. Oh, look at that. Stack smashing detected. Woo, okay. But notice we got test number 1 passed, so hey, we got that going for us. Now I believe that it turns out that these actually do average to 33, and so the fact that it's a float didn't affect our test. So so we've passed one, but we're gonna, what the heck is this? Stack smashing detected. Core dumped. Wow, that's nasty. Okay, so, oh, look what you were supposed to say. Out of array space. Uh-oh. Well, let's go back and look here. All right, so we know there's only 10 of these, right? Now, if we get into here and you're going to write the 10th record, now remember, well, actually, if you're going to write into array space data 10, we know that you're now out of array space because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is where you're allowed to write. So if IDX is equal to 10, you have to do something like, say, and I'm not sure exactly how it's written, but out of array space, and we'll put an endl there, and then we will break. Now, that will break us out of the loop if you're out of array space. So let's run this and see if that gets rid of this stack smashing detected. That's a really cool error message. All right. Ooh, so we're getting somewhere. We got past the second one now. So let's look over here. If we hit this, it should refresh. All right, well, we're looking at that's the binary of the file, but we're waiting for the output 2 to show up here. So I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's go back to this one. It's a little bit slow at the moment, so let's make sure we have a copy of this, and then I'll just hit the refresh the screen. All right, now we have the outputs. Let's see if we've kept our program as well. So let's look at this one. Okay, so again, I gave you answers that worked out. So that was convenient, and I'm sure I did that on purpose when I created the program in the book. That all work out to integers, right? So, so really, whether it's a float or an integer really won't matter. But you notice here we got this out of array space, and we've managed not now to have this stack smashing error message. So that was good, but we have not finished this one. The average was nan. Nan means not a number, and so that's because there were 0 data values, and I warned you earlier when I said we're going to have to be careful about this, to make sure that this is not 0. Well, if you want to make sure it's not 0, just check. Just say if IDX is not equal to 0, let's put a curly bracket there. Let's do this. That's not much of an indent. Oh well, there we go. And else, there's probably a message like there were no data values. I think it's something like that. So we'll just do that first and see how close we get. Okay, so let's see. What's the output supposed to be? Maybe it wasn't supposed to say that. Okay, maybe it already says there were 0 data values. So let's just comment this out for a moment and see. Maybe we don't need it at all. Oh, there we go. So let's take a look. Right, so -1 right away. Your scores were there's nothing, and then there were 0 data values, and that passed the tests. So so there's a lot of things going on here. You should, here, let's get rid of these commented out lines because that's ugly to leave that in there. So this is I believe, totally different way of approaching the problem that was in the textbook. Um, and you should read the textbook and look at that, and then also review what I did here and realize that there's multiple ways to solve a problem. Now, as I've done this, I started to think if it, perhaps I had not introduced the break keyword here in the textbook yet. And probably from context, you found out what that did, which is it will break you out of whatever loop you're in. Now, it's only the closest loop. So right now, there's only one loop. But if there were nested loops here, like while and then a while, the break would only get you out of the closest loop that you were in, the most recent loop, let's say it that way, right? So it's a useful thing. A lot of instructors try to force you not to use it. Sometimes the reason for that is that intro students will overuse it. And really, you could handle this by using that sort of go on flag that I gave you in the textbook so that you don't have to hit the break, right? You can check whether or not you should go on. And then this is just while go on is equal to yes or true or whatever. So, however, this is, as long as you don't overuse this break statement, it's really fine to use it. And hopefully, by watching me go through this, you've seen that a different way of solving the problem, as well as catching on to the process of solving the problems, and that's what's the most important. You can't memorize every possible program that you could be assigned, so you have to learn how to process the ideas and to move forward and to say, oh, well, what was that about? Oh, wait, that didn't work, and etc., etc. So see you on the next one.